So first, just to start off, if you could explain your background and work on Meet Me by the Fountain.
Sure. So I am trained as an architecture critic, and I wrote a book called Meet Me by the Fountain, an inside history of the mall, which is really an architectural and sociological history of the mall from the 1950s to the present day.
There's various factors, and everyone kind of points to either the rise of like online shopping or how the pandemic impacted malls and added to the decline. So, what are some of the actual factors we see at play, and how were they? How did they get us to this point?
Well, one of the interesting things is I started working on my mall book in 2019. So a lot of the people that I was talking to about the trajectory were really more familiar with the pre-pandemic mall history. And what they all told me really universally was that the pandemic didn't change the factors that were affecting the mall economy, but accelerated them. So the pandemic didn't really add new headwinds to the malls, but it made some of the forces that were already at work happen faster because people weren't going, so bankruptcies, et cetera, were accelerated. Now, in terms of the factors that were already affecting the kind of growth potential for malls, let's say, before 2020, there are really three factors. Internet shopping is actually only one of them. Since kind of the rise of internet shopping in the early 2000s, everyone had been saying that it was going to kill bricks and mortar retail. But in fact, before 2020, online shopping only was about 15% of the retail market, and that zoomed up to like the mid 30s, let's say 32, 35% during the pandemic, but it already has started going back down. So obviously, like during the pandemic, everyone like moved a lot of their shopping online, but as soon as they had a choice to go and shop in stores again, a lot of people went back to that because they realized that there are a lot of things that online shopping really aren't good for. One of the other factors going against malls was really just that the United States is over-malled. We have way, way more, shopping square footage per person than other developed nations. So the retail market was already really top-heavy. So as soon as people started shopping less for various income-related reasons, malls really had a hard time and started competing with each other for that market. And I'd say the third factor is really income inequality and the demise of the department store. When we say that department stores are the anchors for malls, there's actually like a financial rationale to that. Most malls need 2 department stores at minimum to sign on before they can be developed. And so when those anchors go down, it creates this big void and lack of draw for that mall. And department stores are really hammered by the 2007 recession because people began shopping more at discount stores and big box retailers than at kind of the lower end department stores like JCPenney and Sears. So what successful malls have had to do is think of other things to do with those anchors. And a lot of malls were unsuccessful of that. And so the bankruptcies of these various department store chains also really took malls down.
And that actually kind of ties in really nice to my next question of, we're seeing so many anchor stores either leave or just completely, go bankrupt and close all their locations. But malls, of course, are still around. So what does kind of the current situation look like?
I think that, many malls are going to go out of business, but there is still an echelon of malls that is currently successful and can go on being successful. But the big trick is to replace those anchors and replace those department stores, because I actually think department stores are not coming back. That's just not a way that like millennials and Gen Z are dying to shop, and I think they're much more attracted to individual brands and individual boutiques at this point, and department stores have lost their cachet. So I think the trick for malls is, as quickly as possible, figuring out other uses for those big box spaces at the end of the malls and other things that are going to be draws for people. The answer to that is really kind of multifold, and it has to do with the larger direction for malls and retail, which is that people are moving away in a lot of cases from kind of clothes shopping and towards more food, entertainment, and community uses. Your former department store can become a church, it can become a medical facility, it can become a trampoline park, it can become a higher-end food hall, and all of those things will bring people back to the mall, but it's a very different mindset than just getting a department store chain to go into that box.
2020 was probably the most up-to-date report that was, regularly around by the National Association of Realtors, and they said over 30% of the time malls are still trying to fill vacant spots with other retail uses, and we're only seeing dual or multi-use, whether it be community space, office space, what have you, around like 16% of the time. Is the claim of malls trying to become dual or multi-use really accurate then?
From what I'm seeing, and this is more anecdotal, the successful mall repositionings are like going in a different direction, are going against clothing retail and into kind of a more expansive idea of like what a draw can be. I don't see department stores and really large scale retail like being successful. And so I think it's more a factor of the kind of conservatism of some real estate markets and marketers where they want to keep doing the same thing even if it's not working. And the larger trends that we see in the suburbs, which are people wanting more walkable communities, people working more from home, so even residential areas are just kind of organically becoming more mixed use. All of that to me points to the need for malls to become more mixed use and for people really to want to see them as more like town centers than as isolated retail environments.
At our current local mall here, the state EPA is actually moving their offices into the old Sears.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a variety of reasons for that, from, size of the space to actually being able to have plenty of parking. Do you think, aside from like traditional dealer multi-use, that there is this avenue for government to be able to get involved and be a part of that conversation and discussion?
I do. I absolutely do. And I see, government offices as being more akin to medical facilities that have moved into malls, which they've been doing for the past 15 or so years. So, yeah, it comes down to what is a part of the city that is growing, that does need more space and does need convenient parking in a place that everyone knows how to get to. And, outpatient medical facilities are something like that. And I think government offices are also something like that. The great thing about both of those uses is there are synergies with the traditional aspects of a mall. In both places, you're often waiting around, and wouldn't you like to be able to get lunch on site or go to a drugstore on site or do a little shopping like while you're waiting for your paperwork to come back, et cetera, et cetera. And it's also good for the employees to have a place that they can exit the office and, go get lunch, walk around. One of the things that I point out in my book is that Victor Gruen, the father of the shopping mall, always intended malls to have some community facilities. And if you look at the floor plans of a lot of the early malls, late 50s, early 60s, they may have a worship space or they may have a DMV or other small scale office in them. So that was part of the DNA of the mall from the beginning.